Hello and welcome to a new video of a review of a cassette deck. And today's video is very special because what we have here the Pioneer stereo cassette deck CT95. And this deck, the Pioneer CT95, is the greatest cassette deck of Pioneer and probably the pinnacle of the cassette deck technology, and probably this is the best cassette deck ever made. Maybe you can think of the Aiwa XKS9000 and the Sony TCK A7ES as the other two contenders, the other two runner-ups to the final challenge and the final of the battle of the greatest cassette decks. You can think that Nakamichi deserves to be acknowledged as the greatest cassette maker, and their decks are the best, and they are the best. They are probably better than this one, but they are older. And by the time this cassette was made, only Pioneer, Sony, Aiwa, and I don't remember any other brand trying their absolute best to make the greatest cassette decks. Nakamichi was, at the time this cassette was made, Nakamichi was making a 3 cassette deck, double capstan 3 cassette deck with manual azimuth correction, but it was feature wise and the spec wise less than the older Nakamichi Dragon, the CR7 or the 1000 ZXL or the ZX9 and 7. Those older decks were much more expensive, but by the time this cassette was made, they didn't make such a great effort. However, Pioneer tried their best with these cassette decks, and probably Pioneer deserves the recognition of having tried hard, because they had not only this model, they had another models which were very close to this one, the CT920S, the CT910S, the CT900S, and some lower models, but they were quite close to this one. On the other hand, Sony had less models, they were great too, they were also very expensive, but probably not as expensive, as good as these ones. And Aiwa had a very good cassette decks, the XK9000 and 7000, and that's it. They didn't have a very complete range of models. So this one is an extreme cassette deck. However, spec-wise, and if you see the functions, it doesn't have very strange functions. Most of the functions are quite common. It's only that they have put their best into electronics and the inside and the build quality and so on. So it's a standard cassette deck. It has you can select the mode of the display, and here we are going to select the mode by which you select tape length, and once you press play, it starts calculating the remaining time of the tape, which is about 5 minutes now, and that's it. And this was special, but not very special by the time this was made. Other brands and other models had it as well. You can switch from the regular count mode and the time mode. Then you had the mode of the meter. You can select the bias level. I'm now not recording, but I can switch to this mode. And then you have two view meter modes, and the difference is especially in the above 0 dB. Here you have the decibels 1 by 1, and here you have them 2 by 2. So if you want a precise calibration, a manual calibration, you can come here and switch to this mode where you go only to -7, and if you switch modes you go to -35, which is a lot, it's a very wide range meter mode. Then you have the PLCS, which I really don't know what this is about right now. I don't remember. I haven't used it. Okay, so and now I'm going to stop and have a press button to return the tape to 0. And if you press, it will return to 0. That's it. Okay. Then we have the Super Auto BLE. This is a feature that some other brands had also, but Pioneer was probably more used to implement it. With this function, you press a button. I'm going to press again to start it, and the computer makes a recording, and that recording is used to adjust the bias, the level, and the equalization. You can see it. And then it chooses the right amount of bias, equalization, and level. And there you have it. You have the BLE data displaying that it has tested the cassette and it's able to record with their best calibration. Then if we move to the right part, we have the controls, we have music search, we have a mechanized open. This one struggles to close the door. I have to help it. It needs a belt change. And you have the monitor HX Pro. This was not very usual. You can switch the circuit on and off. And this switch is very strange because most of the tape that have HX Pro had it always enabled. But with this one, you can select whether to have it enabled or not. Then the Dolby B, C, and S. And then you have a line straight. This is usually in amplifiers to bypass the balance and the equalization stage and have the line straight from the CD input to the amplifier. But here I don't know what it is by pacing. I don't know. However, it's nice to have it, and I'm going to use it to show you that you can. When you select monitor, when you select Dolby S, or you select line straight, this cassette deck had relays. Listen to them. You hearing them? Are you hearing them? Are you listening to them? Okay, so that shows us the quality. Here you can take a look at them. The quality of this cassette, in that it used relays to switch the signal instead of having integrated circuits. With those integrated circuits, you always have some kind of leakage of music, and you could hear the signal even if it was muted or if it was switched. But using relays, the signal is totally switched or isolated depending on the function you have it. This unit has the phone's level knob broken or missing. This unit had a very extreme bump, and it had the motherboard cracked. There was a big crack from this part of the board to this part of the board, and you can see the crack here, and beneath that crack and below that board there's a bunch of wires connecting one side to the other. I rebuilt it myself. I bought this deck very broken, and I had it rebuilt with a lot of wires that they are below this board. And now that we are watching it, let's have a complete look at it. It's a gorgeous deck. It's built like a tank, and it's built with no concession and no cheap circuitry. For example, you have here 3 diode bridges. You can see one is here. In this section you have a power supply, but there's another power supply here, and this power supply here have 2 sets of diodes. So the circuits and the current for the cassette mechanism and for the different stages and circuits is totally isolated, and it's made with totally separated power supply circuits. There, the input volume knob has a shaft, just like expensive amplifiers, going all the way back to the board. So you have the input right there, and the volume is close to the input, so the signal doesn't have to travel a lot to be passed through the volume knob. Okay, then you have a lot of circuits. You have this circuit, and I am not sure, but I had a look. I should see the service manual, but this looks like there are 2 different playback amplifiers. 2 different playback amplifiers, and that was a thing of Dolby S. Dolby S required a lot of circuitry, and probably they built the Dolby S circuitry totally independent from the Dolby BC circuit, because you have here the PB playback amplifier. Here you have it, playback amplifier and playback Dolby BC noise reduction. So this board should be the Dolby, the playback amplifier, and this seems to be the wires coming from the playback head. But here you have this cable, these wires that seem to transfer the signal to this board, and in this board you can also read playback level. So there are playback level knobs here, and there are playback levels knob here also. That doesn't make sense unless you consider that there are 2 different playback amplifiers. And this was such a great deck that it had a DC offset for the left and right channels. I never saw that before. You could have a knob for the playback level. That's of course mandatory, more or less. You can have this. You can even have these variable inductors to equalize the playback, or you could have another set of resistors, variable resistors. But I never saw before the direct current offset. That's amazing. That's amazing. And here you have another time the playback level. You can read here T1000, and sometimes you can read. Let me focus. Sometimes you can also see T1000 or T1000. 100, because this board could be made for both decks, for the even more expensive T1010. Well, going back to the middle again, this is the recording circuit. This is the recording circuit, and here again there's another circuitry that I'd say that it's also a recording circuitry. And again, I think that this board might be the Dolby S circuitry. Might be. Okay, here you have the 400 Hertz, and there it's the 3000 Hertz to generate a tone to make the proper adjustment. Here you have the logic board. And going to the mechanism, well, the mechanism, you can read there, reference, master, mechanism, or something like that. And in fact, it's a quite well-built mechanism. It's a bit strange that it's somehow bent or length, I don't know how to say it in English. It's not leveled, it's not straight, it's somehow leveled. And that makes sense because once you insert the cassette, if you see, it seems that the cassette is bent that way when it's held. So here you have the mechanism a little bit bent. Thankfully, the bump and the crash didn't crack anything of the mechanism, and the mechanism seems to work quite well. And of course, there's these big flywheels down there. They are. They have to be very, very big to keep a low wow and flutter. You can see there's one motor here, capstan motor, and below that board there's another motor which engages this gear, and is used to engage the head block up and down, and the door, and that's it. Okay, I'm opening the door. That's it. You saw it. Okay, that's it. Okay, so this is everything about this great deck. That it's probably the best deck ever made. Probably. I say probably because I know there is the Sony TCK-A7ES and the Aiwa XK9000. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching the video.